The statement came on the 19th of December, the way it comes on the 19th of every month, and I read it at the kitchen table with coffee, the way I've read it for 26 years. $14,311 in charges I did not make. Not fraud. I want to say that up front, because that was my first thought too, and it would have been the easy version. Fraud, you call a number, you sign an affidavit, they reverse it. Done. What I was looking at was worse and quieter than fraud. It was a list, and the list read like a Christmas morning. A men's watch, $4,200. A handbag, $2,860. A jewelry store in Pinecrest Mall, $990. A ski resort in Colorado. A lodging deposit, $3,100. A furniture place, a leather recliner, $1,400. 2 smart watches. A department store, $611. A wine club membership, $240. And on the 9th of December, at 8:04 in the evening, a gas station on Route 9, $40 even. Every one of those charges was made by my son, Nathan, on a company card that has his name embossed on the front and my company's name embossed above it. Osgood Plumbing and Heating. 18 employees, 26 years. My name on the trucks, because I put it there in 1999 with a paint pen and a stencil. And every gift on that list, every single one, went to his wife's family. The watch to his father-in-law, the bag to his mother-in-law, the recliner to his mother-in-law, the ski trip for the 4 of them over the new year, the jewelry to his sister-in-law. The $40 at the gas station on Route 9 was a gift card. That one was mine. He gave it to me on the 22nd in the shop office, in a red envelope with a snowman on it, and he said, "Sorry, Dad. It's been a crazy month. I know it's lame." And then he laughed and said the thing I'm going to carry around in my shirt pocket for the rest of my life. He said, "Honestly, I forgot yours until the last minute." I said, "Thank you." I put it in my wallet. It's still in my wallet, and I'll tell you at the end of this what I finally did with it. Now here's where I have to be careful, because I know how this sounds. A man complains that his son spent his money. I've heard that story in every diner in this county, and it's usually about a spoiled kid and a father who won't say no. And if that's the story you think you're getting, you're going to be disappointed. Because this isn't about the $14,000. I want to be extremely clear. $14,000 is a bad week in my line of work. I've written checks bigger than that for a boiler failure at a nursing home on a Sunday. If Nathan had come to me on the 1st of December and said, "Dad, I need help making a good impression on Bethany's parents this Christmas," I would have argued with him for 10 minutes about the watch and then probably paid for half of it. This is about the number on the 3rd page, because my son didn't just use the company card. He used a company card that he signed a written agreement about in this same kitchen 3 years ago. He used it against a policy he helped me write. And there's a second document, and that document is the reason this story has an ending instead of just a bad Christmas. Nathan has been buying into Osgood Plumbing and Heating for 4 years, 5% a year, on paper, drafted by an attorney, structured so that a 33-year-old with a mortgage could eventually own the thing his grandfather started in a garage. 15% vested at the time that statement printed. 2 more years and he'd have had voting shares. The buy-in agreement has a clause, Section 6Y. I know it by number, and by the end of this you will too. I read that statement 3 times at my kitchen table. Then I did what I've done for 26 years, when the numbers on a page don't match the world I thought I was standing in. I got a legal pad, and I started copying the charges over by hand, 1 line at a time, with the date, the vendor, the amount, and a column on the right that I labeled recipient. Because a list of numbers is an argument you can lose. A list of numbers with names next to it is something else entirely. It took me 40 minutes, Louise came in halfway through, my wife of 39 years, and stood behind my chair and read over my shoulder and said, very quietly, "Oh, Hal." And then she said, "Are you going to say something this time?" This time. 39 years of marriage in 2 words, and she wasn't wrong to say it, and she wasn't being cruel. Louise had watched me not say things for 4 years. She'd watched me at a barbecue in August with a paper plate in my hand, while my daughter-in-law's mother explained to a neighbor that Nathan runs a plumbing outfit. She'd watched me hand over the good ladder, the good truck, the Saturdays. I said, "I'm going to say something on the 24th, because on the 24th at 7 in the evening, the Kesslers were having their Christmas Eve party, the whole extended family, 30-some people, in the house with the white columns out on Fairhaven Road. And Louise and I were invited, because we're invited every year, in the specific way that we're invited every year. We're invited to stop by after dinner, for dessert. 4 years running, my son's in-laws have invited his parents to arrive at their Christmas Eve after the eating is finished. That's where the watch was going to be, on a wrist in that living room, in front of 30 people, on a man who told me at the wedding rehearsal that plumbing was recession-proof. That's the smart play, huh? And then never spoke to me again for the rest of the weekend. So I had 5 days to decide what a man brings to a party like that. I brought a folder. My name is Harold Osgood. Hal to everybody except the bank. I'm 63, and I've been putting my hands inside other people's walls since I was 17 years old. My father, Wendell, started the business out of a 1-car garage in 1971 with a used van and a set of pipe wrenches he bought at an estate sale. He worked out of that garage for 11 years, and he died at 61 in the cab of a truck outside a hardware store with a cup of coffee still in the holder. I was 34. I had 11 days to decide whether to keep the doors open, and I kept them open. And I've kept them open through 2 recessions, a warehouse fire, and 18 months where I paid my guys before I paid myself. That's not a brag, it's context, because you can't understand what a company card means to a man like me unless you understand what the company is. It isn't an income. It's a promise I made to a dead man in a parking lot, and 18 families eat dinner off it. Louise and I have 2 kids. Our daughter Kendra is 36, lives in Milwaukee, teaches high school chemistry, and calls on Sundays. She's not in this story much, and she'd want me to say that when she does show up, she shows up in the right place. And then there's Nathan. I need to describe my son honestly. And honest means I have to describe the good parts, because if I only give you the bad parts, you'll think I'm settling a score, and you'll stop believing me. So here's Nathan. He's the best natural service tech I have ever trained, and I've trained 40. He can diagnose a boiler by sound, the way a mechanic hears a rod knock. He's patient with old people, and I don't mean polite. I mean he'll sit on a widow's kitchen floor and explain a thermostat 3 times without 1 drop of condescension, and she'll call the office to say so. He came to work for me at 22, and by 28 he was running crews, and by 30 he had ideas I hadn't had, good ones about scheduling and service contracts, and I took them, and the business is measurably better because of my son. And he has 1 hole in him, and it isn't laziness, and it isn't greed. Nathan cannot stand to be the least impressive person in a room. I don't know where it came from. Louise thinks it came from me, from a childhood spent watching his old man come home with dirt in his knuckles, while his friends' fathers came home in dress shirts. Maybe. There's a version of this where I'm the reason my son's ashamed of the smell of pipe dope, and if that's true, I'll own it. Then he met Bethany Kessler. I'd like Bethany. I want that on the record too, because in stories like this, the daughter-in-law is usually the villain, and mine isn't. Bethany's a dental hygienist, works hard, loves my son, took real care of Louise the winter Louise had the knee replaced, drove her to physical therapy 9 times, and never mentioned it once at a family dinner. She's a good woman with a difficult mother, and being the daughter of a difficult mother is not a crime. The mother is Roberta Kessler. Roberta stages houses for a real estate group and has business cards that say Interior Concept Director. Her husband, Dale Kessler. And I'll pause here to say that yes, my son's father-in-law and I share a first name with about 4 million other men our age. And in this story, you'll hear his as Dale and mine as Hal. Dale Kessler sells commercial insurance and has a golf handicap he'll tell you about in the first 4 minutes. The Kesslers have a house on Fairhaven Road with white columns that are not holding anything up. I've been in the crawl space of that house. Roberta called me directly, once in 2021, at 9 at night, because a supply line let go under the guest bath, and I drove out there on a Sunday in the rain with a 5-gallon bucket and a wet vac, and I was under that house on my belly for 2 hours. I fixed it. I never sent a bill, because you don't bill your son's in-laws. 3 weeks later, at Bethany's birthday dinner, Roberta told the table about the flood and said, "We were so lucky. We found a wonderful little plumber." A wonderful little plumber. Sitting at the table, 6 feet away, eating her chicken. And here's the thing I need you to understand, and this is really what the whole story is about. Nathan heard it. My son heard his mother-in-law describe his father as a wonderful little plumber at a table with 14 people at it, and my son laughed. Not a big laugh, not a mean one, just the small social laugh a man makes when he's decided that the smoothest path through the evening runs directly over his father. I said nothing. Louise put her hand on my leg under the table, which is her way of holding a door shut. That was 3 years before the statement. And in those 3 years, the pattern set like concrete. And the pattern is this. On Fairhaven Road, I'm the trade. Nathan is the businessman. And the way you keep those two facts in the same room without them fighting is that somebody has to pretend the money runs the other direction. Little things. All of them little. At their wedding, the seating card for me said, Harold Osgood, and the seating card for Dale Kessler said, Dale Kessler, father of the bride. Fine. Weddings are chaos. At the wedding reception, Dale gave a speech about welcoming Nathan into the family and said he hoped Nathan would find a real career path in insurance someday if the trades don't work out. Laughter. Actual laughter from a room. My son stood up and hugged him. When they bought their house in 2023, I paid the closing costs, $11,400. I never told a soul, and I never will again after tonight. At the housewarming, Roberta walked 8 people through that house and said, "In the kitchen, Dale and I are just so proud we could help these kids get in." Nathan was standing right there. He had a beer in his hand. He said, "We really appreciate it. We really appreciate it." There it is. That's the sentence. Not a lie, technically, because it doesn't specify who's being appreciated. A man can go his whole life on sentences like that. Now, before you decide I'm a saint who sat quietly for 4 years out of pure grace, let me correct you, because that's not the truth either. I stayed quiet because staying quiet was cheaper for me. Every time I let it go, I got to keep my son's easy company. I got the Sundays where he came over and helped me with the deck. I got to be the dad who wasn't difficult, unlike the mother-in-law who was. I bought peace with silence, and I told myself I was being generous, and Louise knew better, and she let me have it because she loves me. That's my share of the blame in this, and there's a bill for it, and it came due on the 19th of December. Because a boy who learns that his father will absorb any amount of erasure without complaint eventually stops noticing that he's erasing him. And then one December, he sits down with a company credit card and buys his wife's family $14,000 of Christmas. And the thought, "This is my father's money," does not arrive, because in the story he'd been telling on Fairhaven Road for 4 years, it wasn't. It was just money. From the business that he runs. Let me tell you about the card, because the card is the spine of this whole thing. And if I don't explain it properly, you'll think I set a trap for my own son. I didn't. He signed the trap himself 3 years earlier, and I have the paper with the coffee ring on it. We have 4 company cards. Mine, Nathan's, one from my field supervisor Marcus, and one that lives in the shop's safe for emergencies. They exist because when a rooftop unit dies at a restaurant at 11 at night, a tech needs to be able to buy a $2,000 compressor from a wholesaler in the next county without calling the owner's wife for a card number. That kind of access needs a rule, and in 2022 my insurance carrier agreed with me, so we wrote one. Not a lawyer's document, a 1-page company policy, written at this kitchen table by me and my bookkeeper Doreen Pike. And this is the part that matters, reviewed and improved by Nathan, who was the one who pointed out that the original draft's approval threshold was too low to be practical in the field. Nathan raised it. Nathan argued for $200 instead of $50. He won that argument, and he was right. And I made the change. And then all 4 cardholders signed the final version. It says, and I've got it in front of me, company cards are for company purchases. Personal use is permitted only for incidental amounts under $200, must be disclosed to the bookkeeper within 7 days, and must be reimbursed on the next payroll cycle. Any personal charge over $200 requires prior written approval from the owner. It also says, and this is Doreen's language, that undisclosed personal use may be treated as an advance against wages or as misappropriation at the company's discretion. 4 signatures. Mine, Marcus's, Doreen's as witness, and Nathan Osgood in his fast, slanted hand, dated the 4th of March. Now the second document, the one that turned a family embarrassment into an actual reckoning. When Nathan turned 29, he came to me and said he wanted to know if there was a future or if he was just an employee with the same last name. Fair question. Best question he ever asked me. I took it to my accountant, Warren Ito, and to an attorney, and we built a real structure because I'd watched 2 families in this county destroy themselves passing companies down on a handshake, and I wasn't going to do that to my kids. 5% per year, vesting each January, purchased partly by Nathan out of a payroll deduction and partly credited as sweat equity, up to 49% over 10 years, with a buyout mechanism for the rest when I retire. Kendra gets a cash equivalent from a separate life policy, so nobody's fighting over a warehouse in Milwaukee. And in the middle of it, on page 4, Warren put a clause I didn't ask for. He said, "Hal, this only works if the equity is tied to conduct, not just time. Otherwise, you're rewarding tenure and hoping for character." Section 6C. Vesting pauses, and any unvested tranche for the current year is forfeited at the company's discretion if the buying party misuses company funds or assets in a material way, misuse being defined by the company's own written policies. Cure provision. Full restitution plus a documented 12-month period of compliance restores the vesting schedule without back credit for the paused period. Nathan signed that too. He read it. He asked Warren what material meant, and Warren said, "Son, if you have to ask whether it's material, write it down and ask your father first." 15% vested. $14,311 of watches and handbags and a ski lodge in Colorado. Undisclosed, unapproved. 6 days before the January vesting date. You see it now. So, the 5 days. December 19th to December 24th. Here's exactly what I did. And I'd ask you to notice that not one thing in it required a raised voice. Friday the 19th, after Louise went to bed, I called Doreen at home. 31 years that woman has done my books. She came to work for my father. I read her the charges. She was quiet for a while, and then she said, in the flat voice she uses when she's already 3 steps into the work, "Hal, none of that came through me. Not one disclosure. Not a note. Not a text. Nothing." And then she said, "Do you want me to pull the whole year?" I hadn't thought of that. That's the thing about people who've been doing a job for 3 decades. They know the shape of the question you're too tired to ask. "Pull the whole year," I said. Monday morning, she brought me 11 pages, $19,206. 12 months, every one of them under the radar because they were spread out, and because I'd gotten lazy about the detail lines in the middle of the year, and because Doreen flags what she can see, and Nathan had gotten in the habit of coding personal charges to a job number. That's the part that changed the temperature in my chest, and I want to name it precisely, because it wasn't rage, it was recognition. Coding a charge to a job number isn't sloppiness. Sloppiness is forgetting to disclose. Putting a $2,000 handbag under a job number for a strip mall retrofit is a man building a hallway around his own behavior. Anniversary dinner at a steakhouse in the city, $410, coded to a job. 2 airline tickets in April, $1,100, coded to a job. Roberta Kessler's 60th birthday, a catered lunch, $680, coded to a job. A wine club membership renewing monthly since March in Dale Kessler's name, which I know because Doreen called the wine club and asked. I sat in the shop office on Monday with those 11 pages, and I could see the whole thing at last, top to bottom. My son had been financing his standing in that family out of the company his grandfather started in a garage. For a year, maybe longer. Doreen only pulled 12 months because that's what the online portal keeps. And here's the question I sat with, and it's the one I want to hand to you because I chewed it for 5 days, and it's the only genuinely hard question in this story. Not whether he'd wronged me. That was arithmetic by then. The question was, does he think of it as stealing? Because if he did, then I had a thief for a son, and I needed to know that. But if he didn't, if somewhere in the last 4 years the line between my father's company and the company had gone soft in his head because everybody on Fairhaven Road kept telling him it was his, then what I had was something else. Something I'd helped make. If you've ever sat with a version of that question about someone you love, you know the specific weight of it. So tell me in the comments, honestly, before I tell you how it went. Which one would you have assumed, walking into that party? Monday afternoon, though, before Warren, there was a shop floor I had to walk across. And that walk is the reason I didn't do any of this quietly. Osgood Plumbing and Heating runs out of a metal building on Grange Road with a parts counter, a dispatch office, and a bay where we load trucks at 6:40 every morning. 18 people. I know all their kids' names. I know which 2 are behind on child support, and which one is 9 months sober. Because in a shop this size, you know. And because they tell me. Because their fathers told my father. That Monday, after Doreen handed me the 11 pages, I walked out of the office to grab a coffee from the pot by the counter. And Marcus was there with Thomas and a new kid named Devin, 22, who I hired in September. And Tomas was arguing with Marcus about a hotel. Tomas Aguirre has worked for me for 9 years. He's my best commercial guy. In October, he'd driven 3 hours to a job in Erie, an emergency call, a church boiler, and he'd stayed overnight. And he'd asked Doreen first, in writing, whether the $94 motel was an approved charge on the company card, because it wasn't listed in the policy, because he wasn't sure. Doreen approved it. It took 2 minutes, and on that Monday, 3 days after I found $19,000 in Christmas gifts and steakhouses, I stood at my own coffee pot, and listened to Tomas explain to a 22-year-old that the rule is you always ask. Boss doesn't care what it costs. Boss cares that he knows. Devin said, even for like a coffee? And Tomas said, for a coffee, buy your own coffee, man. I stood there with a paper cup in my hand, and I want to tell you honestly what that did to me, because it was worse than the statement. The statement was my son. This was 18 people. Every one of those men and women had been following a rule that my son had been ignoring for a year while driving a truck with my name on it. If the day ever came that I had to sit somebody down about $80 of gas, my authority to do it had a $19,000 hole in the middle of it. And the moment that story got out, and shop stories always get out, they get out at the wholesaler counter, they get out at the bar on Friday, the rule would be dead. Not weakened, dead. And you cannot run a company where 18 people share 4 credit cards on a dead rule. That's the thing about a small business that people who've never run one don't feel in their body. My father used to say it like this: the rules aren't for the honest ones, and they aren't for the thieves. They're for the tired ones at 11 at night in a parking lot deciding. That afternoon, I put a note in my legal pad, and it changed the whole shape of what I did on the 24th. It said, whatever you do, it has to be documented, and it has to be something you do to a man named anything else. Because that was my real test, and I recommend it to anybody in a family business, whoever ends up where I was. Not what does he deserve, not what would be fair to my son. The test is, if this were Tomas, what would I do? If Tomas Aguirre had put $19,000 of personal charges on a company card, coded a third of them to job numbers, and driven a company truck to Colorado towing an unrated trailer with his kid in the back seat, I would have terminated him. Same day, with regret and a handshake, and no police, but I'd have terminated him, and every person in that shop would have understood exactly why. So the honest answer was that I was going to give my son something better than I'd have given Tomas, and I needed to be at peace with that. And to earn it, I decided the consequence had to be at least as visible as the favor. If Nathan got mercy in private that Thomas wouldn't have gotten, then Nathan was going to get accountability in public that Thomas would have been spared. That's not vengeance, that's the exchange rate. If you're going to be soft on the outcome, be hard on the record. Tuesday, I went to see Warren Ido. Warren Ido has done my taxes for 19 years. Small office over a bakery, 4 employees, and a man who has never once in 19 years told me what I wanted to hear. He read the 11 pages. Then he read the card policy. Then he read Section 6C, which he wrote. And he sat back and took his glasses off and cleaned them, which is what Warren does instead of swearing. He said, "Hal, I want you to understand your position before you decide anything, because your position is stronger than you're going to be comfortable with." Then he laid it out, and I'm going to give it to you the way he gave it to me, because it's the architecture of everything that happened on Christmas Eve. 1. This is not a gray area. $19,000 of undisclosed personal charges on a company card, some of them coded to job numbers, is misappropriation under my own written policy, signed by the person who did it. If Nathan were an unrelated employee named anything else, Warren said, we would be having a conversation about whether to involve the police, and my insurance carrier would require me to at least consider it. 2. Section 6C is triggered, not arguably, cleanly. The January tranche was forfeitable at my discretion, and the schedule paused, with a cure path back. 3. And this is where Warren earned his fee. The tax exposure. Those charges were coded to job numbers, which means they were deducted as business expenses, which means my company's return understated income by $19,000. That's not Nathan's problem, Warren said. That's yours. That's my signature on that return. We amend. We pay the difference. We document why. And we do it before anybody asks. And then he said the sentence that took the last of the softness out of me. Hal, your son didn't just spend your money. He put your name on a false filing. I sat in that office and thought about my father in the truck outside the hardware store. 4. Warren asked what I wanted, and I said I didn't know yet. And he said, "Then let me tell you the 3 doors, because everyone in your position walks through one of them. Door 1, eat it, say nothing, pay the tax, cancel the card quietly, keep the peace," Warren said. And I appreciated the honesty, that about half his clients pick this one, and that the ones who do usually come back within 4 years with a bigger version of the same problem. Door 2, burn it. Report the card misuse to the issuer, file a police report, terminate his employment, void the whole buy-in. Legally available. Warren said, "You'd win, and you'd be right. And you would be a man who is right, alone, at 63, with an 18-person company and no successor, and a grandchild you see at a mall food court twice a year. Dr. 3, charge him for it. Not vengeance, price. Restitution with a schedule, the consequence the document already specifies, and a documented path back that he has to actually walk." And Warren said the thing that I ended up building the whole night around. The paperwork is not the punishment, Hal. The paperwork is the only thing in this that isn't emotional. Let it do the talking, and you'll still be able to have Thanksgiving. I picked door 3 in that office on a Tuesday, and then I asked Warren for something that surprised him. I asked him to write it all up that week before Christmas. A 1-page memo of findings with the totals, a restitution schedule with actual dollar figures, a notice of vesting pause under 60 with the cure terms spelled out, and an amended return authorization for me to sign. He said, "You want the paperwork done before you've talked to him?" I said, "Warren, if I talk to him first, I'll be negotiating with my son at my kitchen table in the middle of the night, with nothing in my hand but how I feel. And I'll lose, because I always lose that one. I've lost it for 4 years. I want the numbers to arrive before the feelings do." He had it ready Thursday morning, the 23rd. Now I have to tell you about Wednesday night, because Wednesday night is the reason I did it in that living room instead of quietly in my shop office. And it's the part of this story where I stopped being a man managing an accounting problem. Wednesday, Louise and I went to Nathan and Bethany's house to drop off gifts for our granddaughter Piper, who's 4. That's the tradition. We do our Christmas with Piper on the 23rd because the 24th belongs to Fairhaven Road, and the 25th is split. We were in the living room. Piper was showing me a plastic horse, and on the sideboard, wrapped, tagged, lined up in a row like a small army, were the Kessler gifts. I could read the tags from where I sat, because Bethany writes big. To Dad, K. To Mom, K. To Aubrey. And Roberta Kessler was there in the kitchen with Bethany, and I could hear her, and she was on speakerphone with somebody, her sister, I think. And I heard my daughter-in-law's mother say this, and I'm quoting it exactly, because I wrote it down in the truck 4 minutes later. "You should see what Nathan got, Dale. Bethany won't tell me what he spent, but I saw the box. That boy takes care of this family. Honestly, Carol, I don't know what we did to deserve him. Bethany's father-in-law is a sweet man, but they don't come from anything. So it means all the more, you know? They don't come from anything." Piper put the plastic horse in my hand and said, "Grandpa, he needs a barn." And I said, "We'll build him one, sweetheart." And my voice worked fine, and Louise looked at me from across the room, because Louise has known my face for 39 years. In the truck, she said. He heard that too. He was in the hallway. He was. My son was standing 8 feet from that kitchen when his mother-in-law said his father's family doesn't come from anything, and he said nothing. Again, because saying something would have cost him 15 minutes of comfort in a house with white columns that don't hold anything up. And I understood, sitting in my own truck in my son's driveway, that the $14,000 wasn't the wound. The $14,000 was a receipt for the wound. Nathan had been paying for 4 years in installments to be somebody in that family. And the currency he'd been paying in was his father. First my dignity, and then, when that ran out, my money. Louise said, "So what are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm going to that party." She said, "Hal, 30 people." And I said the thing I'd figured out somewhere between the sideboard and the driveway. I said, "Louise, for 4 years, everything true about this family has been said in private, and everything false has been said in public. I'm not going to fix that in my shop office." Then I drove home and I called Marcus, my field supervisor, and asked him to be at the shop at 7 a.m. on the 24th to help me with something. And he said, "Boss, it's Christmas Eve." And I said, "I know. I'll pay you double and you'll be home by 9. And he said, "What are we doing?" I said, "We're taking a truck out of service. I'll explain the truck because it's not what you think, and it matters more than the money." Nathan drives a company truck, a 2022 crew cab, my name on the door, the good one, and he's driven it as his personal vehicle for 4 years. That's normal in the trades, and I don't begrudge it. But there's a detail. It's insured commercially, and my policy has a named driver schedule, and the named driver schedule requires the vehicle to be used for company business, and Nathan had driven that truck to Colorado twice in the last 2 years on personal trips, once with a snowmobile trailer that isn't rated on my policy. I found that out Monday from Doreen, because fuel charges in Nebraska in February are a story that tells itself. If that truck had rolled over on a mountain pass with my daughter-in-law and my granddaughter in it, on a trip my policy didn't cover, towing a trailer my policy didn't cover, I would not have been able to protect any of them. That's not a technicality. That's a family in a ditch with no coverage, and me finding out about it in a hospital hallway. So on Christmas Eve morning, Marcus and I met at the shop, and we swapped the plates and the fleet decals from the 2022 crew cab onto the spare truck, the older one. And we pulled the crew cab's fuel card, and I put a work order in the system, taking it out of the named driver schedule effective the 26th. Then I called my insurance agent at home on Christmas Eve and apologized, and told him exactly what I'd found, and asked him to send me a written confirmation of what my exposure had been. He sent it in 20 minutes. That email went in the folder. Marcus, who is 51 and has worked for me for 16 years and knows more about my family than he's ever said, wiped his hands on a rag and said, "Boss, is Nate all right?" And I said, "He's going to be." And Marcus said, "Good, because that kid taught my son to sweat a joint." And then he went home to his family, and I stood in a cold shop by myself and put the folder together on the parts counter. Here's what was in it, and this is exactly what I brought to a Christmas Eve party. 1. Warren's memo of findings. 1 page. $19,206. 12 months, with the subtotal for December circled. 2. The itemized December statement. 3 pages, with the recipient column filled in by hand in my printing. 3. A copy of the card policy, 1 page, 4 signatures, dated the 4th of March, with the $200 threshold highlighted in yellow, because Nathan is the one who argued for that number. 4. A copy of page 4 of the buy-in agreement, section 6C, with the cure provision underlined. 5. The insurance letter about the truck. 6. A restitution schedule with 3 options, printed, each one signable. And 7. This is the one I added last, at 8 at night, standing at the parts counter. My father's 1971 business license, the original in the frame, off the wall of my office. because I decided if I was going to talk about what the company was, I wasn't going to describe it. I was going to set it on the table. One more thing happened before the party, and it's the one that decided how I'd talk in that living room. So I'm not going to leave it out, even though it doesn't make me look clever. Christmas Eve afternoon, about 4 o'clock, Louise found me in the garage with the folder open on the workbench, and she asked to read it. All of it. She sat on my rolling stool in her good sweater and read every page while I pretended to organize sockets. When she finished, she said, "Hal, this is very good." And then she said, "And there's a version of tonight where you use it to hurt Nathan in front of his wife's whole family, and you'll be able to tell yourself the whole time that you're just reading numbers." I said I wasn't planning to hurt him, and my wife, who has been married to me for 39 years and has never once needed a folder to know what she thinks, said, "Then take out the wine club." I said, "It's a documented recurring charge. It's the clearest pattern in the..." She said, "It's Dale's name on a monthly bill. If you read that out in that room, his own family will make him small about it for 10 years, and he's not the one who signed your policy. Nathan is. Read what Nathan signed and nothing else." She was right, and I knew it in about 4 seconds, and I hated it for maybe 3 of them, because the wine club was my ace. It was the thing that would have made a room gasp. A man's father-in-law on a monthly subscription on his son-in-law's father's company card. Since March. That's the detail that gets repeated at every family funeral for a generation, which is exactly why it had to come out. So I pulled 2 pages out of that folder at 4:15 on Christmas Eve in my garage and put them in the drawer under the bench. The wine club statements and a page of Doreen's notes about the anniversary steakhouse dinner, because that one had Bethany in it, and Bethany hadn't done anything. What was left in the folder was clean. Everything in it was either signed by my son or was a document about my own liability. Not one page in that folder existed to embarrass a third party. And Louise said one more thing on the way out the door that I've thought about more than anything else in this whole story. She said, "Don't ask him why. Not tonight. If you ask him why in front of 30 people, he'll have to invent a reason, and then he'll have to defend the reason for the rest of his life. That's the best advice anybody ever gave me about my own son. Ask a cornered man why, and you don't get the truth. You get a position. He'll tell you why later, on his own schedule, if you leave the door unlocked. Mine took 15 months, and when it came, it was worth waiting for." We got to Fairhaven Road at 8:10. Dessert time. The driveway had 11 cars in it, and the columns had lights wrapped around them. Roberta answered the door and said, "Oh, the Osgoods. Come in, we're just getting into the pies." And she said it warmly, genuinely warmly, and that's the part people never believe. These are not cruel people. They're people with a hierarchy, and inside the hierarchy, they're perfectly pleasant to you. 32 people in that living room and dining room. I counted. I count things. And Dale Kessler was standing by the fireplace with his sleeve pushed back, showing the watch to 2 men I didn't know. He'd already opened it. They opened one gift on Christmas Eve, apparently, and he'd opened that one, and there it was on his wrist. $4,200 of my company's money, catching the light off a Christmas tree, and my son was standing next to him with a beer, glowing. Bethany saw us come in and hugged Louise and said, "We're so glad you came," and she meant it. She always means it. Nathan crossed the room and shook my hand and said, "Hey, Dad, Merry Christmas Eve." And he was happy. And here's what I want you to sit with, because I had to sit with it. My son was genuinely happy to see me. There was no guilt in his face. None. Not a flicker. That was my answer to the question I'd been chewing for 5 days. He didn't think of it as stealing. It hadn't occurred to him. Somewhere in the last 4 years, in his head, the company had stopped having an owner and started just having a supply. So I set the folder down on the sideboard, next to the wrapping paper, and I got a plate of pie I didn't eat. And I waited 11 minutes for the moment, because you don't start a thing like this. You wait for the room to hand it to you. The room handed it to me at 8:29. Dale Kessler tapped his glass with a fork. He does a Christmas Eve toast every year. The whole family goes quiet for it. And he did the usual. Family, health, another good year. And then he turned, with the watch on his wrist, toward my son. And he said, and I have this word for word, because Louise wrote it in her phone as he said it. And I gotta say something about Nathan. 4 years ago, this kid marries into our family. And I gotta be honest with you, I wondered. But look at him now. Runs his own outfit, takes care of everybody. And would you look at what he did for me this year? Bethany, you did good, honey. Some of us build the businesses. And he raised his glass toward my son. And some of us fix the plumbing. Right, Hal? He said my name. He turned and toasted at me with a watch I paid for on his wrist and said some of us build the businesses and some of us fix the plumbing. 32 people laughed, not viciously. It's the reflex laugh of a room that thinks a joke has been made. My son laughed too, and I stood up. I want to tell you first what I didn't do, because I planned this for 5 days, and most of the planning was subtraction. I did not raise my voice, not once, the whole night. I've spent 40 years talking to people over running water and shop compressors, and my voice carries fine at conversation volume. And I've learned that a man who doesn't raise his voice in a loud room makes the room come to him. I did not say the word steal. Not once. Warren told me not to, and he was right. And beyond the legal reason, there's a human one. The second you say that word, everybody in the room stops listening to what happened and starts arguing about what to call it. And I did not touch Roberta or Dale. I want to be clear about this because I know it's what half of you want. I could have. I had a wine club membership in Dale Kessler's name in that folder. I could have set that living room on fire in 9 seconds. I didn't. And I'll tell you why at the end. I stood up and I said, Dale, can I borrow the room for 3 minutes? I've got a Christmas thing for Nathan, and I'd rather do it in front of everybody, since he does everything in front of everybody. Somebody said, aw. Somebody actually said, aw. They thought I was about to give a speech about my boy. I picked up the folder off the sideboard, and I took out my father's business license in its frame, and I set it on the coffee table in the middle of that living room, facing the room, and I said, that's a plumbing license from 1971. My father, Wendell Osgood, out of a one-car garage on Sherman Street. He died in a truck at 61. 18 families eat off that piece of paper now, and Nathan here is buying into it, 5% a year, which most of you don't know, because he's never said it out loud in this house. The room got quiet in a different way, not shocked, confused. You could feel 32 people reaching for a frame that fit. Then I said, Nathan, come here a second, son. He came. God bless him. He came, with the beer still in his hand, and a smile that was starting to go uncertain at the corners. I took out the 3 pages of the December statement, and I held them up so the room could see there was writing on them. And I said, at absolutely normal volume, Nathan, on December 2nd, you spent $4,200 at Halloran's Fine Timepieces. Dale, that's the watch on your wrist. On December 4th, $2,860 at Marchetti Leather. Roberta, I believe that's the bag by the stairs. December 6th, $1,400. Vandermeer Furniture, that's the recliner. December 8th, $3,100. Aspen Ridge Lodge, that's the 4 of you over New Year's. December 11th, $990. Pinecrest Jewelers, that's Aubrey's. $14,311 total. All of it on an Osgood Plumbing and Heating Company card. Nobody laughed. Somebody set a glass down on a coaster and it sounded like a hammer. I said, "Now, here's the part I need you to hear, Nathan, and I'm not going to say it twice." And I put the card policy on the table, and I turned it so he could see it, and I put my finger on the yellow line. $200, that's the threshold. You wrote that number. You argued me up from 50, and you were right. And I changed it because you were right. And then you signed it. Right there, March 4th. And I put down the 11 pages from Doreen. 12 months, $19,206, and about a third of it was coded to job numbers, which means my company deducted it as an expense, which means my signature went on a return that wasn't true. I'm amending that after New Year's. I'll pay the difference in the penalty myself. That one's mine, because it's my name on the filing. And then I looked at my son, and I said the only sentence in that whole night that had any heat in it, and even that one, I said quietly. You didn't steal from me, Nathan. You did something I think is worse. You spent 4 years letting these good people believe your father is a wonderful little plumber who doesn't come from anything. And then you paid for that story with the company your grandfather started. And you never once thought of it as mine, because in the version you've been telling in this room, it isn't. My son's face came apart. I have seen my son cry twice as an adult, at his wedding, and standing in that living room on Christmas Eve with a beer in his hand. Roberta Kessler said, very fast, "Hal, this is not the place." And I said, without turning around, "Roberta, it is exactly the place. This is the only room where any of it was ever said." And here's the thing that surprised me. Nobody backed her up. 32 people, her own house, and the room did not close ranks. I watched an aunt at the dining table put her hand flat on the tablecloth and look at Dale's wrist. I watched a young guy, one of Bethany's cousins, mouth 19,000 to the person next to him. Rooms do arithmetic faster than you'd think. Dale Kessler was the one who moved first, and I'll give the man this. It was the only decent thing I ever watched him do. He unfastened the watch, took it off standing right there, and set it on the coffee table next to my father's license, and said, "Quiet, not to me, to the carpet." I didn't know. Bethany, I swear to God, honey, I didn't know. And Bethany, my daughter-in-law, who nobody in this story has been fair to, including me, said the sentence that ended the whole 4 years. She turned to my son and said, "Nathan, whose closing costs were they?" The house went dead silent, because she'd been at the housewarming too. She'd heard her mother say, "We're so proud we could help these kids get in." She'd been standing right there when her husband said, "We really appreciate it." And my son, crying in front of 32 people, said, "Dads, that's it. That's the whole climax. One word." I've thought about that word for a year. Not the watch, not the folder, not the 19,000. The single most expensive thing my son ever did for me was say one syllable out loud in a room where it cost him something. Then I did the part nobody expects. And it's the part I'd want you to copy if you ever end up in a living room like that one. I put the restitution schedule on the table and I said, "All right, that's the accounting. Here's the fix, and then we're going to eat pie." 3 options. Printed, each one signable, and I read them out loud in about 90 seconds. Option 1, full restitution of $19,206 over 24 months, deducted from payroll at $800 a month, no interest. Section 6C, vesting pause of 18 months, January tranche forfeited. Full compliance for 12 documented months, and the schedule restarts. No back credit. Truck stays a company truck with a mileage log like every other truck. Option 2, immediate repayment in full from wherever he wanted to get it. 12-month vesting pause instead of 18. Same compliance terms. Option 3. He walks. Employment ends. Buy-in unwinds at his contributed basis. He keeps his 15% cash value, and he owes me nothing but the personal charges. No lawsuit, no report, no bad reference. He'd have my number, and he'd have Christmas, and he would not have the company. And I said the last thing, and I said it to the room as much as to him, because the room was the whole point. There's no option where it goes unwritten. That's the only door that's closed. Nathan took option 1, standing up, with Bethany's hand on his back, at 8:51 on Christmas Eve, on the corner of a coffee table. With a pen, Roberta Kessler went and got out of a kitchen drawer because nobody could find one. And then, because Warren Ido is a professional, there was a 4th page in that schedule that I hadn't mentioned to anybody, not even Louise. A 1-paragraph acknowledgement for the recipients. Not a demand, an acknowledgement. That the undersigned understands the listed items were purchased with company funds without authorization, and agrees to either return the item or make no claim of ownership pending restitution. Dale signed it. Roberta looked at it for a long 10 seconds, and then signed it too and said, "We'll send back the recliner. The bag's been used. I'll write a check for the bag." She wrote it that night, $2,860, on the kitchen counter, and handed it to me. And I said, "Thank you, Roberta." And she said, "Hal, I'd like to say something to you sometime that isn't about money." And I said, "All right." That's as close to an apology as I ever got from that house. And I've decided it counts. We stayed 40 more minutes. We ate pie. Louise talked to an aunt about knee replacements. Piper fell asleep on the stairs, and I carried her out to the car, which is the one thing that happened that night that I'd have paid the $19,000 for. There's one more scene from that night, and it happened in a driveway, and it's the one I'd keep if I could only keep one. I went out to warm up the truck around 9:30, and Nathan followed me out. No coat, standing in the cold in his good shirt, with his hands in his pockets, and his face was wrecked. And he said the first honest sentence he'd said to me in 4 years. He said, "I don't know how to go back in there." And I want you to notice what he was asking. He wasn't asking me to forgive him. He wasn't asking about the money, or the vesting, or the truck. My 33-year-old son was standing in his in-laws' driveway, asking his father how to walk back into a room where he'd just been seen. And this is where I nearly ruined everything, because what came up in my throat first was, "Now you know how it feels." 4 years of it. That's what was in my mouth, and it was true, and it would have been the single most expensive sentence of my life. I didn't say it. I want credit for exactly one thing in this whole story, and it's the 3 seconds I spent not saying that. What I said instead was, "You go back in there, you sit down next to your wife, and you eat pie." That's it. Nobody in that house needs a speech from you tonight. They need to watch you stay in the chair. He said, "They're all going to be talking about it." And I said, "Yeah, for about 6 weeks. And then they're going to talk about something else. And the only thing anybody will remember in 5 years is whether you stayed in the chair." He stood there a second, and then he said, "Quiet. Grandpa's license." "You brought Grandpa's license." I said, "Yes." And he said, "I haven't looked at that thing in 10 years. And that's when I knew it was going to be all right. Not because he was sorry. Sorry is cheap on Christmas Eve. Sorry is what everybody's at 9:30 at night in a driveway. It was going to be all right, because the thing that got through to my son wasn't the 19,000, and it wasn't the room, and it wasn't the watch coming off Dale's wrist. It was a framed piece of paper from 1971 with his grandfather's name on it. He went back in. He sat down next to Bethany. He ate pie. He stayed in the chair for another hour, and I watched 2 of Bethany's cousins come over and talk to him about the Steelers like nothing had happened, because that's what decent people do at Christmas when they don't know what else to do. and my son answered them, and his hands shook, and he stayed. Now the accounting, because a man who kept books this long owes you the closing balance. Nathan paid $800 a month for 24 months, 23 payments on time, one late by 4 days last August, and he texted me before it was late, which is the entire point of the exercise. Paid in full in November. He asked me once, in month 5, whether we could pause it for a month because Piper needed a dental thing, and I said yes, and we documented it, and he made it up in month 6. Section 6C ran its 18 months. He lost the January tranche, which cost him about $31,000 of eventual equity. And that's the real price of that watch. And he knows it. And he says it out loud now, which is new. His vesting restarted last January at 20%. 2 years behind where he'd have been. He'll be at 49 in 2033 instead of 2031. Warren amended the return. It cost me $4,100 in tax, penalty, and his fee. And I paid it out of my own account and not the company's, on purpose, because I wanted one thing in this story that was purely my problem. The truck came back into the schedule on the 26th with a mileage log in the glove box. He fills it out. Every trip. He's never once complained about it. And Marcus tells me Nathan is now the most annoying man in that shop about other people's mileage logs, which is how you can tell a lesson took. The company card. He doesn't have one anymore, and he didn't ask for one back. He asked for a purchase order system instead, and he built it. And it's better than what we had, and 18 people use it now. Kendra called me from Milwaukee on the 26th. Bethany had called her. My daughter said, "Dad, are you okay?" And then she said, "I've been waiting 9 years for you to say something in that living room. The shop found out, by the way. Of course it did. Shop stories always get out. I told you that." What got out wasn't the version I feared, though. And here's how that happened, because it's the practical part of this, and somebody listening runs a business and needs it. The second week of January, I called a shop meeting. 18 people, 7 in the morning, donuts, 20 minutes. And I said, plainly, with Nathan standing next to me, because he asked to be standing next to me, there was a significant personal use violation on a company card in December. It's been documented, it's being repaid on a schedule, and the card's been pulled. The person who did it is standing right here, and he's going to tell you the rest. And my son told 18 people, most of whom he'd trained, that he'd charged $19,000 of personal purchases to the company over a year, that a third of it he'd hidden in job numbers, that it cost his father $4,000 in taxes and penalties, and that he'd lost 2 years of his buy-in over it. Tomas Aguirre asked one question. He said, "Nate, does the 200 rule still mean 200? And Nathan said, "It means 200, and I'm the reason it's 200 and not 50. And I'm the reason it's the only number in this shop I don't get to argue about anymore." That was the whole meeting. Nobody quit. Nobody gossiped much either. And I think that's because there was nothing left to whisper about. You can't spread a secret that got announced with donuts. Marcus told me later that it was the single best thing that ever happened to that policy. And he's right. Rules that survive a public breach come out stronger than rules nobody ever tested. The purchase order system Nathan built that spring is the direct result. He didn't build it as penance. He built it because he'd spent a year on the wrong side of a rule, and he understood the shape of the whole better than anybody in the building. And Dale and Roberta, here's where I keep my promise to tell you why I didn't burn them. Because I finally understood, at 63, standing in a house with fake columns, that Dale and Roberta Kessler were never actually the problem. They were the audience. They believed a story that was told to them on purpose for 4 years by a man they had no reason to doubt, and the only person in the world who could have corrected that story was me, and I chose not to. 40 separate times, because correcting it would have been uncomfortable. You cannot burn an audience for believing the show. You can only stop running the show. They come to our house now, twice a year. Roberta brings a pie, and it's a good pie. Last summer, she stood in my shop and asked me how many trucks I run, and I said 9. And she said, 9, and got quiet. And that's fine. And Dale sent a check for the ski lodge deposit in March, unasked, $3,100, with a note that said just, should have been mine to pay. DK and my son. That's the account I actually care about. He's 34 now. 15 months ago, he asked me to have lunch, just the two of us, and he brought a printout, which is a thing I taught him to do, and he said, I've been trying to figure out when I started thinking of it as mine, and I think it was the housewarming, because Roberta said it in front of everybody, and I let it stand. And after that, I had to keep it standing, and the only way to keep it standing was to keep paying for it. And I told him the truest thing I know, and it's this. Son, I let it stand first. You were following your father. If a story like this one is worth your time, subscribing is how the next quiet ledger finds you. And there's always another one, because there's always another good man buying his way into somebody else's living room. Last thing, and then I'll let you go. The $40 gas station gift card sat in my wallet for 11 months. Louise kept telling me to use it or throw it out. I couldn't do either, and I'm not proud of that. Keeping a wound in your wallet is a young man's habit, and I'm too old for it. The day Nathan made the last payment, in November, he came into the office and put the receipt on my desk. And he didn't say anything clever. He just said, "That's the last one, Dad." And after he left, I took that card out of my wallet, drove the old truck to the station on Route 9, and put $38 and change of my son's Christmas present into a company fuel tank. Then I drove to my father's grave, which is 9 minutes from that gas station, and I sat in the truck with the heater running. The frame with the 1971 license is back on my office wall. There's a nail hole beside it now, from where I hung it, crooked the night I brought it home. I never patched it. A man should be able to see where he set something down.